Hello everyone, and welcome to rSlashTNA and another episode of rSlashPettyRevenge. This first story is named, My Son's Name Helped Me Get a Small Dose of Petty Revenge Against a Girl Who Constantly Tried to Compete with Me in High School. So when I was in high school, I was on the speech and debate team. If you're unfamiliar, think drama club meets young Democrats and young Republicans. I mostly did the public speaking events that focused on real-world political topics, and I loved it. I usually made it to finals in my events, but I had fun even when I didn't, and made some really great friends from other schools. If I wasn't in finals, I would go watch others who were competing to support my teammates. There was a girl I saw at almost every tournament. Let's call her MM, and I didn't do any of the same events, because she focused more on the drama side of speech and debate. But M was constantly comparing herself to other people, and would get really arrogant if she made it to finals in her events, and I didn't make it to finals in mine. Anytime she didn't make it to finals in her events, she would cry and accuse the judges of not being fair, and would then pout in the cafeteria all throughout finals, and sometimes wouldn't even go to awards to support her teammates who did win something. In conversations, she was also a big one-upper. You could never talk about anything fun or cool you did, because she'd always done something cooler or more fun. If you've ever seen Glee, she was a real-life Rachel Berry. She and I are still friends on social media, although we haven't personally spoken very much since high school. I've watched her flaunt now 2 different failed engagements, along with a slew of random jobs that never seem to work out for very long. I don't post as much on social media, so she didn't really know what was going on in my life. My long-term partner and I found out in early March that we were pregnant. We had been trying for a baby, and didn't think it would ever happen because we had been told by doctors that our chances of conceiving naturally were slim. So this baby means everything to us. Before we even got pregnant, we had agreed on a name for our baby, if we were to have the boy we both wanted. In high school, my grandmother had told me that if she had ever had a son, this was the name she was going to give him. However, she only had 2 girls. I fell in love with the name immediately, and told her that if I ever have a son, I would give him this name. She passed away while I was in college, but I'm still in love with the name and fully intend to honor that promise I made to my grandmother. Thankfully, my partner also fell in love with this name when I told him about it. Flash forward to the present day. My partner and I were about a week away from finding out if we were having a boy or a girl, and then one day on Instagram, I see a post from M announcing that she is pregnant with a boy. She's due 2 months before me. At this point, I hadn't announced my own pregnancy publicly yet, so M didn't know, but some our mutual friends knew. One of them, who was really close to her, informed me that she had shared her baby name list with her and that the name my grandmother picked out was on the list. M had specifically said that she remembered me talking about liking that name at a speech tournament in high school, and that the name had stuck with her ever since, particularly because the name is shared by her favorite poet. She told our mutual friend that name was her top choice, but her partner had a different preference, so they were still going back and forth about it. My partner and I recently found out that we are also having a boy, and are using the name we love, regardless of what M names her baby, because what difference is it really going to make, especially because we don't even live in the same state, and these children will probably never meet. It's also not a unique or rare name by any means, so to us it feels silly to act like only one of us can use it. But this is where I got my small dose of petty revenge. After we learned the gender of the baby, we decided to go ahead and announce our pregnancy publicly, and since we already had his name picked out, and it's something we know we're not going to change our minds about since it has so much sentimental value, we decided to include his name in the announcement. So M learned that I was also pregnant, having a boy, and using the name I loved. I would be lying if I said that I hadn't thought about M's reaction when my partner and I made the decision to also announce our baby's name. M hasn't said anything to me about the baby, or about our name choice, but apparently she has had a lot to say to our mutual friends. She said if she can talk her partner into it, she still wants to use that name for her son, and that since her baby will be born first, if I do end up using it for my son as well, then I'm just copying her. She has apparently become obsessed with trying to find out details about my pregnancy and my relationship with my partner since I don't post as much on social media. She's been harassing our mutual friends asking about me, to the point where several of them are starting to cut ties with her because it's getting to be too much. Even her partner has reportedly told her that she's going overboard, and has apparently vetoed this name for their son, because he thinks she's too weirdly fixated on it and me and wants her to stop stirring the pot. So I'm having a baby with the man of my dreams, getting to finally use the name my grandmother fell in love with decades ago, and as an added bonus, My friends from high school are finally seeing how weird M is for the way she constantly tries to compete with different people. Editing to add, for the people who keep commenting asking the name even though I shared it in like 10 different comment threads at this point, his name is Joe. Joe Mama. All throughout this story, I was waiting patiently for the name of their child, and in the end comes with the name Joe. I thought that was it, until the good twist at the end. You got me. How many of you that just heard this story got you too? Leave your comments below. This next r/PettyRevenge story is named, entitled Students Thought They Were Playing Me, They Were Mistaken. I apologize for any typos. I'm on the phone, and my autocorrect is drunk on power. So, a few years ago, I was teaching a private urban religious college. Since I only had MYMS, I was thankful for the opportunity to teach and get the experience before I moved on for my PhD. The school usually had me teach accelerated night courses, which were aimed on non-traditional learners, adults going back to school after many years off. I loved my students and had a blast teaching them. I had some issues with a few here and there, but generally my experiences were really positive. But there was this one couple. Let's call them Hannah and Larry. That semester, I had been asked to cover a more traditional course at the last minute. Rather than being accelerated, it met 3 times a week for an hour all semester. Furthermore, the last was very small, only about 4 students, which would have been fine. Small classes can be great, and a paycheck was a paycheck, if it hadn't been for Hannah and Larry. You see, this couple had attendance issues, to put it mildly. They would show up to a class or two, and then just vanish for a week or more with no word. Just when I suspected they were gone for good, they'd show up, usually with sole excuse or another, medical issues, car problems, work, etc. At first, I tried to be sympathetic. I always have the attitude that life happens, and when it rains it pours sometimes. But at a certain point, I began to grow a bit suspicious. They were selling me a story, okay? I was immediately suspicious, but I'm usually inclined to let things slide to a certain point, same as my professors did for me. This was all the worse because of the small nature of the class. Every time I did prep for a session, assuming all 4 would be present, they'd skip and throw my plans off. But when I just accepted they would be gone and prepare activities for 2 students, they'd show up. All of this would be frustrating, but acceptable if it weren't for 2 things. 1, whenever they showed up, these 2 would have an attitude about them and just expect everyone to conform to their presence and bend to their will. And 2, they of course weren't doing any of the work. And these 2 factors came to a head, as Hannah, who was the louder and more confident of the 2 of them, would all but demand extensions, the ability to hand in late work, etc. I'd give them, only for both her and Larry to blow the work off again. I like to be pretty accommodating to my students within reason, but it quickly became obvious that Hannah thought she was playing me and could get whatever she wanted, and that couldn't stand. I have some level of pride and hate being seen as pushover. Now I could have crushed them immediately and just said, no more late work. But I was sure Hannah would just throw a fit and go to administration. I knew the admin would back me up, but it was a hassle I really didn't want. I was working on a second MS at this point, and working 2 other jobs. I was frothing at the mouth busy at that point, and hadn't even planned on teaching that semester. I only agreed because they needed me. And besides, I'm a pretty easygoing guy, but I do have my limits. I was pissed at this point, but I also have a wicked to me sense of humor. Hannah wants to think she has me wrapped around her finger? Okay, let her think that. I was gonna hand her enough rope to hang herself with, so for the past few weeks whenever she asked for an extension, I'd smile and say sure, and then chuckle when nothing came in. Every time I wrote her and Larry emails reminding them of the new date. Getting things in writing is key, kids. And then we arrived at the final. I hadn't seen the twosome in a few sessions, and was actually surprised to see them stumble in to take the test. They failed, of course, but what you gonna do? Hannah comes up to me in front of the class and asks for another extension. I put my best teacher voice on and said I was disappointed. But fine, life happens. However, I was posting grades the next weekend, so the absolute last minute I would accept any late was Friday at 11:59 p.m. The second it hit midnight, my books were closed. I asked if they both understood, and they summoned up a bit of solemnness when they assured me that they did. Good. I confirmed it in an email and then sat back to grade the finals over the week. I mean, there were only 4, it wasn't that much work. I knew there was a risk they'd follow through and I'd end up with a semester's worth of work to grade, but I was feeling pretty confident that that wasn't going to happen at this point. Friday night rolls around, I didn't work my other jobs that day, and my own schoolwork was done. So I decided to buy a few beers and kick back to play some video games and relax. I look down at a certain point and realize that it's midnight. I open my email, remind everyone that the books are now closed. If I give an extension, it's open to the whole class. I'm not playing favorites, not that anyone else needed it. I cracked open another beer, let out my best supervillain laugh, and went back to my game. Sunday comes around and I'm posting the final grades for the semester. I usually hate failing students, but I admit I had a smile on my face as I assigned Hannah and Larry their well-deserved Fs. 10 minutes after I hit save for the grades, I hear the familiar ding of my email going off, followed by another. Now who could this be? It is, of course, Hannah and Larry. Larry's email can best be summed up as, "Oh my God, didn't you get my email with the work? I sent it on Friday." Hannah said the exact same thing. Now it's obvious they're thinking they can get another day or two to get the work this way. After all, hadn't I been so pliant and naive all semester? Oh, the fools, they've played right into my hands, and this is the moment I've been waiting weeks for. I double-checked to make sure I hadn't missed emails from them, just to be safe. I hadn't. And then I typed my response. "No, I didn't, and I did just double-check after your last message." That's okay, emails get lost sometime. At this point I like to image Larry smiling while reading this. He'd won again. God, this professor is an idiot. I continued, "So what I'm going to need you to do is go back into the email you sent me with the work. Just take a screenshot which has the timestamp of the email and forward that to me along with the work. That'll prove you sent it on time." I then responded to Hannah's email saying the same thing. What was their response? Did their eyes widen as they realized they'd been held accountable for their actions? Did panic set in? Were there tears, howls of regret, the gnashing of teeth and rending of hair? Sadly, I'll never know. I never heard from them again. They didn't even bother making another try. And me, well, I decided to buy some more beer that night to celebrate once again. Occasionally, I'll tell my current students the tale a humorous reminded that 1. Yes, I'm accommodating. 2. Yes, I'm pretty laid back. But 3. I'm not an idiot, and don't try to play me. It usually gets a good laugh, and if some of those laughs sound a wee bit nervous, all the better. I also wonder if Hannah and Larry ever responded back or even took the class again. What do you think? 1. They petitioned and filed a complaint. 2. They went their separate ways and never saw each other again. 3. Took the same class the next semester with a different teacher. Or 4. Something else? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you for listening to rSlashTNA and stories from rSlashPettyRevenge.